Today we wanted to go over three things: what causes inflation, just a general understanding, evidence of that inflation. I have some real numbers from where I live that are very concerning.
So essentially, inflation is caused by the government or the Fed printing money. So you basically are just adding more dollars into the system for a competing fixed number of things.
Okay, so just to keep the number simple, if I am paying $1,000 a month in property taxes.
It puts financial friction on people's lives, and that friction creates stress, and that stress manifests in a lot of different ways. So think about it like this: if you cannot save your way out of inflation, you have to invest your way out of inflation. So this means if you're not investing at a rate of return that's equal to inflation, you are losing buying power each year, right?
I want to come to the poker table with severe advantages over everyone else at that poker table. Right? Like they all have four aces in their deck. I have 12 aces in my deck, right?
Pretty
That's how
much.
I want to come to the poker game. To weekly headlines and Project Pearls. In headlines, we unpack this week's biggest stories and share how they're shaping our own personal wealth building decisions in real time.
Then in Project Pearls, we'll pull back the curtain on our real estate deals and share the wins, the challenges, and the learning opportunities.
We have a great wealth strategy session today on how do you combat 7 to 9% inflation. You create a kick A investment portfolio. With me today is the Sultan of Smart Money, Dr. Reid Faldette. Reid, how are you this Friday, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's been a productive morning, trying to keep the momentum going before I crash this afternoon, and then hopefully enjoy a busy weekend of we have some friends coming over, they're bringing their kids, so it always sounds like a good idea, and then it's just straight chaos and your house
Then
gets
it's just a
destroyed.
lot.
But you do it for the kids. You do it for the kids. How about
Similar.
you?
I've got a bunch of to-do items that I just downloaded from my brain and my to-do lists. About 12 to get done today. So I'm excited. A lot of fun stuff. I got a new closing that I just signed a PSA for. Um, yeah, should be a lot of fun. So let's handle our topic today, Reed. Um, we want to talk about inflation. The government has a stated inflation that they calculate. I've read a bunch on it, and a bunch of people are concerned about their calculations. President Trump has mentioned multiple times he's concerned about their calculations. And, an individual's real inflation is based off of what they buy, right? Certain things inflate faster than others each year, and your personal inflation is based off of what you buy. And you should, in general, just keep an eye on that and get a sense of what your actual inflation is, not what the feds are telling you, right? Today we wanted to go over three things: what causes inflation, just a general understanding, evidence of that inflation. I have some real numbers from where I live that are very concerning. And then, we're an action-based podcast. We're all about getting stuff done, not complaining, not just looking at stuff. It's like, okay, see problem, what are the consequences of that problem and what solutions are we going to take? So we're going to focus on solutions as well. Reed, you want to start us off on what causes inflation?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, inflation is caused by the government or the Fed printing money. So you basically are just adding more dollars into the system for a competing fixed number of things. So, I mean, that's the simple way of looking at it. We talk about it from Josh and I were debating the best way to describe it because we think about it a little differently. But interesting way to think about it is just a tribe of people, fixed number of people they're all living in the tribe. They're all making widgets. They're exchanging those for a fixed number of dollars, say $100 in the system, right? If you come in and just put another $100 in the system, what's going to happen, right? The currency is inflated, and therefore the cost of things are going to go up because everyone has a little bit more money competing for the same number of things.
Yep. If you have the same number of widgets, right? If it was 10 widgets at $100, now each widget's worth $10 originally. Now they're worth $20 each, or they're not worth, but that's what they cost. That is the basics of inflation. There are some other concepts out there that I will mention that I will not try to explain because I don't think I can do it. I tried with Reid before the call and I did not do it succinctly. But the other like key concepts, if you just learn like basic economics, is taxes create inflation. So as taxes go up, inflation goes up. I mean, that's a really simple concept to think about. And the way to think about that is when you have taxes going to the government for administration, management, things that don't create widgets, that they create value in society, that also creates inflation. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Should we move on to evidence of inflation? I thought this is where things got interesting for me. Good.
Yes, yes,
Tell
you
my
had some good
story.
numbers. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So,
Give us the proof.
I own a lot of real estate in town, both personal, but mostly business. And they like to send out, the county does a tax statement. And what's fun is on the back of that tax statement, they say, what the total tax revenue for the county was from 2019 until now. And I'm just trying to keep things simple here, but the basic numbers are, um, I ran the numbers from 2019 to now. For property taxes, we're at 7.5% average increase per year. So, you just run the numbers on that. Let me pull it up here. Okay, so just to keep the number simple, if I am paying $1,000 a month in property taxes, that means I'm paying 12,000 a year. In 20 years, at a 7.5% growth rate, I'm paying 50 grand a year in property taxes. Okay. Why I use 20 is because a lot of us own a home and like in 20 years we hope to be retired. Right. So I'm helping you with your retirement planning. Is it's not, a 3% increase per year is just anecdotally, right? The evidence is showing that much. And remember, this is an asset you already own. This isn't you gaining more income and paying taxes on this or going out and buying something and paying sales tax. This is something you already own. And it makes you feel like you don't own it because you're paying the government for it, right, every year, and you're going to be paying more. And so, this is pretty concerning to me. I mean, people are trying to retire and 7.5%, that's a huge nut a year to try to keep up with. And then I ran the numbers for insurance. Insurance is even worse. Since 2019, home insurance costs have increased by an average of 9.4% a year, right? So if you're paying $1,000 a month in home insurance, that would become 6,000 a month or 72,000 a year. So in summary, between your taxes and your property insurance, if you're paying, 2,000 a month now, you're going to be paying over 10,000 a month in 20 years, so over 120 grand just to
It's
own what
crazy.
you already own, just to keep
So,
owning what you already own. Um,
so
yeah,
have you seen this in Florida where the governor is trying to pass the no property tax? They're trying to figure out a way to why? Because
DeSantis. Yeah, I mean,
yes.
he believes fundamentally like I do. Like, if you really want to own a piece of property, you need to own it and not owe a
Mhm.
bunch to the government every year. Now, I mean, there are services that get to your house, right? Sewer, right? That goes to your house, water that goes to your house, electricity that goes to your house. And you need to pay for those, right? And you need to pay not only for the services, but for the infrastructure that goes in to replace those services, right? And I think that's where property taxes come from a bunch. It's like the government saying, hey, we need to replace all these county sewer lines, right? We need to replace all this stuff, so we need to charge you to do that. But I think charging that in the sewer fees, charging those other things, right, make more sense to me because that's the actual good or service that you're trying to
Well,
buy.
think so. This is manifesting. Well, I would just say specifically in Florida, they say that a lot of homeowners that have owned their home for 30 years have to sell their home because they can't pay the property taxes and insurance, even if they have no mortgage on it. There's there's that feeling like, well, dang, I can't even own a home in this state because it's the price to own it is too high. I
Yeah,
mean,
the property
that's
values have shot
sad.
up. The insurance has shot up,
That's
and
sad.
it's sad. It's
And
yeah, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't pass the sniff test, right? It doesn't
it,
feel right. It feels wrong, right?
So,
Um,
in
yeah.
talking about your point about inflation with taxes, right? So, if I own a retail strip center, right, and my property taxes go up 7.5%, what do? I pass those increases onto my tenants because they're triple net tenants. Now they run businesses. What are they going to do? They're going to increase their fees of whatever service or widget that they increase because they're not going to just let their margin shrink down to nothing. And this just continues on and on and on, right? Any type of warehouse, if it's multifamily, you're going to increase your rents a little bit to support it or whatever. And so you can see how it starts is something as simple as property taxes and just carries forward into everything else from that.
And I ran electricity too because I feel like we've discussed it before. The electricity is starting to become like the new currency.
Yeah.
We use electricity every day in our lives. AI uses a ton of electricity. So electricity is almost becoming the new dollar. And so locally, same thing. You're between 7% and 7.5% average annual increase in electricity costs over the last since 2019. And ultimately, how does this affect you? This is affects you on buying power, right? Your wages go up a certain amount per year, costs of things go up per year. Like, what can you buy? Like, what kind of quality of life can you provide for your family? A home, travel, vacation, right? Food, nutrient-rich food, like healthy food, not like, the cheapest, like top ramen like we used to eat in like freshman year of college, right? To keep the expenses down, cup of noodle. So it's like, why this hurts my heart and makes me worried is like, the American dream. I want people to be able to have a rich life with their friends, with their family, going and, playing golf, playing tennis, like we're doing whatever you enjoy with your family and whatnot. And owning a home, a place you can call your own. I mean, these are things that, I'm emotionally connected to for my community, wanting them to have. And the numbers with this inflation just make that less and less achievable, right? Less and less likely to be achieved.
It puts financial friction on people's lives, and that friction creates stress, and that stress manifests in a lot of different ways. I mean, this is a very micro level, but you could say the number one cause of divorce is usually some kind of financial stress or strain, right? That's often touted as like the number one cause of divorce. Well, just you're not as your best self if you are financially stressed. I mean, you just
Yep.
aren't. You are in
Yeah.
survival mode. You are not in thriving, enjoying life. And so, yeah,
It,
it's a big problem that you have to consider and
I
how to
saw
combat
this with my cousins. They grew up in San Francisco, right? And the amount of it's all of them have dual income, husband and wife both work, right? All of them. And the percentage of their income that just goes to paying for their home and their property taxes and also it's astronomical,
crazy.
right?
Yep.
They're just grinding just to stay afloat,
Mhm.
right? And they have salaries that like if you and I in our towns had, we'd be like, oh, you're good, you're cush, right? And for them, having two strong salaries, you're just barely getting by. Um, and then like the basic services that I take for granted, like good schools. I mean, we have great schools locally. There, like they don't believe in the school system, right? So like everyone sends their kids to Catholic school, right? And so it's like, oh, there's another expense, right?
Yeah.
Government can't execute on like a successful school system, right? Like failed to
Sadly,
execute, so now you got to pay for that. So it's just yeah, it's harder to
it's a
get by.
problem.
Yeah,
It's a
harder
problem.
to,
And we're fortunate that we're even on the, middle class, upper middle class, you're a professional. We went to professional school. And so we know people that we would consider should be middle class or maybe lower middle class. Man, it's tight. It's tight for them. It's tight. And it hurts to see. Um, and even they don't have it right now. Like a lot of those people don't have enough margin in their life to even invest or find ways to combat inflation, right? Because that's what we're going to talk about here is like, what does this problem mean? It means that um, you're gonna every year you're not able to invest and beat inflation means that you're gonna have to keep working or you're gonna have to drastically reduce your lifestyle expenses.
Yeah. I think I always go back to like needs and wants, right? So like needs are shelter, right? And the shelter, need is going to be live with parents, right? That's like if you can, right? And if not, it's like live with roommates in apartment, right? That's like basic human need. And I don't
Mhm.
see most of our like dental assistants, dental admin staff. I don't see them with their incomes and the cost of things getting past that, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the next one need is like food, right? Um, yeah, it's expensive to eat healthy, right? Uh,
Well,
and then,
transportation probably is number two, right? Like,
well, I mean, transportation is important, but if you can't eat,
yeah,
then
shelter, food, yeah,
shelter,
yeah, you
food, I
say
think one,
clothing.
two. Transportation is next, right? So obviously you start with the bus, and then after that you buy a car. I feel like they've been able to keep vehicle costs. I don't feel like the inflation on vehicle costs has gone up as much, right? You can still get a used car. Gas
Yeah.
prices have been held down, right, by the government. They've put a lot of energy into that by opening up more oil exploration in the US, like a ton the last 20 years, right? And then some other things. So they've kept that car. So transportation, I feel like is accessible. Um, but yeah, so anyways, it's just like the American dream has changed, right? We talked about this, the average time you buy a house has got pushed back from early 20s to like late 30s, right? So even if it is a dream, it's postponed by 20 years, right? And then, retire at 60s, retire at 65. We're not seeing that either, right? People just keep working because they can't get ahead, right? With these
The,
items.
the sad thing about this too is, okay, so I just was reading this. If you don't feel like you can own a home, a lot of people delay getting married and having kids because you
Mhm.
are not gonna likely have your new spouse move into your parents' house with you, and then you're probably not gonna likely have kids right away. And so this all gets pushed out. If that home ownership date gets pushed out, a lot of those other lifestyle things get pushed out. And then people again have less kids and that we're not able to replace ourselves within the economy. You have a declining population, and just you just see how it all kind of snowballs quickly.
Yeah, getting married in your early 20s, having four kids, right? One spouse works, right? That's 1950, right? Now we're
Yeah.
in 2025. You're right. It's build up a large education deficit, like debt, right? Try to get ahead of that debt, right? Finally get ahead of that debt, get married in your, I don't know, early 30s, you know, you and the wife get ahead of that debt together, start having kids in your mid 30s. Oh, right. Now we can have one or
Maybe
two
one, two.
instead of
Yeah.
four,
Yeah.
right? And then yeah, it's just a different American dream.
Different
And
time.
the amount of people that can have that American dream less and less, right? Like yesterday, you know, 60% of the American population has a sixth grade reading level or less, right?
That's
So,
crazy. That's
I mean, it just
crazy.
brings it home, like how are you going to achieve, how are 60% of the American people going to achieve an American dream if they're barely reading at a sixth grade level? People who they're barely reading at a sixth grade level, it's hard for them to
Keep
get that
elevating.
income level, right? So that
Yeah.
means are 60% of the people not going to own a home, right? In America, I mean, is this where we're headed? So we really wanted to frame like what causes inflation, where are we at, like realistically now? And then the other evidence here is the national debt, right? So with the national debt being so high, with interest rates being high. Like we don't have a solution for the national debt right now. With the current numbers, it's going to continue to compound and grow, which means we're borrowing from today. We're borrowing from tomorrow for today, right? So that means that tomorrow doesn't look any better. Uh,
And that means we're gonna keep fueling inflation because the government's gonna keep printing money as necessary to fund that deficit and
which
therefore keep inflating the currency. And so we don't see an end in sight for this higher inflation rate.
so what do
That's
we do?
so
What do we
yes,
do?
let's get some solutions. We're doomers right now. Let's talk some
So
solutions.
we handled one and two, what causes inflation, evidence of inflation. It's not pretty. I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I don't like to live in the doom and gloom. I like to live in action steps. What can we do about it, right? So, and we're not going to talk about like political or economic things that because that's not something you can do to change your situation, right? That's more of like getting involved in politics, getting involved in other things. So, what you can do about it. Reed, do you want to kind of
Yeah,
frame
yeah.
this?
So think about it like this. If you cannot save your way out of inflation, you have to invest your way out of inflation. So this means if you're not investing at a rate of return that's equal to inflation, you are losing buying power each year, right? You're getting less wealthy. You're getting poor. So just keep that in mind. So what's the other side of that, right? Like you have to achieve a rate of return that's greater than inflation. Like that's what you have to do. That is the prescription right there for it. Um, and if you can't do that and you're losing buying power every year, then again, you have to work forever or greatly reduce your lifestyle expense, which is neither of those is good. So the solution, again, is we have to invest well. I mean, that's to put a
Y-
fine point on it. Invest
Yeah,
well.
we have to invest well. So we have to beat this 7 to 9%. Now we're not, so we're using anecdotal evidence, right, of the 7 to 9%, but this is anecdotal evidence that is affecting any homeowner, right? So I'm coming at this from because most of our audience are homeowners, right? So in my area, these are like shared expenses by all these homeowners, 7 to 9%. And yeah, so even though this is anecdotal, it's also like calculate your own numbers, right? When I went to the store the other day, we were driving home. We were at a convenience store to let the kids use the restroom, and I was just looking at the cost of candy bars, right? It was like 33 cents when I was a kid. Now they're like 3.79, right? So that's a 10x, right? So I'm running these numbers showing you guys in 20 years, right? Like I'm saying it's going to be like a 5x in 20 years, right? And I'm looking at candy bars and it's a 10x in 35 years, right? So those numbers kind of check out, right? Like cost of candy bars has also increased at this number. So just start doing the math around you. If you're not sure, if you're still like, no, the government says it's 3% a year or 2.5%, like start looking at what you spend money on and what that cost 5 years ago, 10 years ago
Do a
and I
gut check.
think it'll start giving you a gut check that inflation's minimum 5%. Okay, so if we're going to use 7 to 9.4%, those are the numbers we came out today. Uh, so, let's look at asset classes. A few weeks ago, Reed and I started, when we saw like the increase in gold, we started running numbers over the last 10 years. What's the average like return on gold? What's the average return on the stock market? And with this recent increase in gold value, the numbers are pretty similar between stocks and gold, right? I think I was getting somewhere in like an 8 to 9%. Um, I can't remember exactly average return over that time. Okay.
Yeah, for
For
both
both.
stocks.
For
The
both.
average
Like,
of the yes.
yeah, it
Yep.
wasn't really like stocks would have did better or gold did better. They both were, it was like 7 to 9% in that range, depending on when you start and the dates, but just ballpark 10 years. So if I was in stocks or gold for 10 years, 7 to 9%, and inflation is 7 to 9%, we're seeing you're not actually making any money investing in gold. You're not making money investing in the stock market over the last 10 years. What you're doing is preserving your buying power. right? You're able, if you're $100 over that time, earn that return, and inflation had the same amount, your $100 has grown to a level that you can buy the same amount of goods and services that you could 10 years ago by being in the stock market or being invested in gold or a diversified portfolio of both.
which
Okay.
is which is a good
Yeah.
starting point. You at least preserve buying power.
You're
That's a good
not
starting point. That's
you're
better
not
than the
losing
opposite.
buying power, right?
Yes.
Like, but if you just have your money sitting in a checking account at 1% or 0.1%, you are losing buying power with that cash that's sitting there, right? So, Reed and I both are always a proponent of having enough cash to not be stressed, right? To cover emergencies, but we're both very uncomfortable with keeping too much cash because we understand uh,
Inflation.
real inflation, and we don't want our money sitting there the devaluing. So if your money just keeps up with inflation every year, right, Reed, you can save a certain amount a year, but most people are just going to have to keep working, right?
Mhm.
Because their savings is just maintaining value in stocks or gold. And to really get ahead in life, you need to be out earning inflation. You
Mhm.
need to be saving, and then your savings, your investments need to be out earning inflation. So, Reed, how does one out earn the stock market with investments? How does one out earn gold, the 7 to 9% with investments?
Yeah, yeah. So, one of there's kind of two main approaches that we talk about is own a business, right? As we're dental practice owners, or own shares of business that you understand, that you have strong convictions in, that you believe the aggregate of the return of those shares owned, which is usually a blend of cash flow and appreciation, is going to go up over time, right? Greater than that 7 to 9%. And we see that. I think we've said that many, many times. Like if you own your own business, uh, it's probably going to be your best returning asset. I mean, if you do well, if you own a successful dental practice, it's probably going to be your best ROI in those early days.
Yep.
Yep. So there's personal ownership in a business, as in we own a dental practice. There's private equity and partnerships, right? You could own, buy into a series of franchises, or maybe Josh owns a construction business. There's lots of different types of businesses that you can partner in or you can own. And then there's of course public equities, right? The stock market, like we talked about. But of course, there's limitations with public equities, as you may not have control over the outcome. But still, it's something. Those are kind of our number one class of assets to own is businesses.
Number one, I mean, you see these businesses appreciate. Think about every business as like a life cycle, right? Most businesses fail at the beginning, right? So you got to find one that's going to continue to grow. But you have businesses increase in value, and then you have businesses kind of flatline, and then you have businesses decrease in value, right? Just just on average. Think about any business. Think about Starbucks, right? I'm from Washington, started in Seattle, really had a lot of growth, then kind of plateaued, and then now it's kind of dropping down, right? Lululemon, just north of me in Canada, same thing. When I was in college, started getting hot, all these new locations, all these new fabrics, and now they've got like major competition, right? There was a great article. There's like 7 companies that are kind of like right doing what they're doing, right? And so every company, so what you want to do to beat 7 to 9%, you need to buy a business or be part of a business in the growth phase. Once you get to the plateau phase,
Mhm.
it's the same thing. You're just kind of maintaining with inflation, right? And then in the down phase, you're really getting destroyed. So yeah, find a business that you understand and you believe in that's in the growth phase, and that'll get you ahead, right? Um, and just think tech companies, right? You find the right tech company, you're going to have astronomical growth, but it can be any company. I mean, locally, we've talked about kind of anti-AI, right? The HVAC companies are doing well, the electric companies are doing well.
Mhm.
Things you can't replace with AI easily, There's always companies with young go-getters who are willing just to outwork everyone else, who are sharp at us and work, those grow. And then you have like the older folk who are focused on quality of life, right? And so their businesses have kind of stabilized. But then as they age, if they don't have a great succession plan, those businesses start to shrink. We had the largest, I think it was the largest asthma medical group in town, literally just shut their doors last month, a month or two ago. No transition from,
Wow.
sold to the hospital. No, there was nothing. Just
Mm.
shut their doors, right? And so you had a business that was probably grew at one point, had peaked, and then had probably been petering down for years, right? And you don't see what's going on inside, and then they just shut their doors. So that creates opportunity for a young go-getter asthma group, right, to seize market share and grow. So those are the cycles you're kind of looking for on the business side,
Yeah,
uh, is
that's
how I
that's really
look at
good.
it.
And those are those opportunities there too. Is even on that decline, right? You might be able to pick up that business for a huge discount. You see that in dental practices sometimes too. It's like there's just a retiring dentist slowing down, had his practice for sale for a little bit, but hasn't really been pushing it. And they don't want to shut their doors. They'd rather at least give it to somebody so you
Yeah.
can get really favorable pricing and terms. I mean, that's dental practice specific, but that exists with a lot of service businesses where the old retiring operator, baby boomer, is just wants to give it to somebody almost, right? Seller financing or whatever. So, yeah. So not just on the growth phase, but if it is in a declining phase, having the opportunity to swing in and change operations around too can be a great opportunity.
And my very short checklist when I invest in a business is one, do I understand the business? If I don't, it's a no-go. Is the
Yep.
operator awesome? Like high integrity, very talented, strong work ethic,
Yep.
and married well. 'Cause if you don't have the spouse supporting you, and they have those things, I understand the business, right? Like that's typically a good business investment.
Mhm.
Uh, um, do we want to move into real estate?
Yeah, let's do real estate next. I think we hit the businesses pretty well.
Okay, go
Yeah,
for
let's
it. You
go.
want to start?
Yeah. Okay. So uh, I said the first category is businesses as assets to own that are a great asset to own to outperform inflation rates of 7 to 9%. The next one we like is real estate because there's ways to force appreciation. When we talk about investing in real estate, we're not talking about just like buy stabilized deals, right? That's not going to probably produce the returns that we need to beat
You
inflation.
won't, you won't, you won't, you won't beat inflation.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, you're talking
Not
about
by
like
much.
yes, not by much anyway. And so there's basically two classes that we're talking about here. Development, in which you are buying undervalued land, enforcing appreciation through entitlement, permitting, and then eventually building a structure on top of it that makes everything worth more, right? You're taking a piece of land and creating a income producing asset from it. So each of those steps of buying it undervalued, you might get some equity, right? Going through the entitlement and permitting process, you're creating some equity. And then when you build that structure and you lease it out, whatever it is, you're creating equity. Like you're forcing appreciation through all of those steps.
You're changing the material state of something, right? It's like you've seen that little example on Facebook where it's like iron is worth 1 cent a pound or something, right? And then it's like iron, when you turn it into X, is worth this much, right? And then iron turned into some like precision manufacturing device or whatever is worth 1,000 times X, right? It's the same
Yep.
concept. You're
Yep.
changing the state from land to entitled land to vertical building to stabilized building, right? That's how you create value and development is changing the physical state of something. Um, yeah, and then you were
Yeah,
gonna, I think,
you're
touch
taking
on.
you take the raw materials and you assemble them to create something of greater value than the raw materials themselves.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing is value add real estate. So Josh does more development. I've done some, but I do more value add. Josh has done value add, right? But again, I do more of it. Josh focuses more on development. So here's the other part of real estate is the value add. You're buying an existing property that's discounted. You want to always get something at a discount. So again, you get equity on day one. And then with operational and efficiencies, you're increasing value, right? So sometimes you have to come in, renovate, make the property look nicer, but in doing so, you're increasing the income potential on the property and therefore the value of the property. We've done this many times. So this is the other way. You're buying at a discount, you have some kind of way that you know you can improve it, and then it's going to be worth more because of it. Not that it's just worth more, but now it's also income producing or at least more profitable.
Yeah. In the opposite of this is when people all the time come to me and say, yeah, medical, triple net, that's the place to be. Do you want to invest in medical triple net? And you know, I've owned medical triple net, right? You've owned medical triple net, and we both understand that medical triple net has lower risk, right? Because you have tenants who are more likely to be there. But you also have like fixed rent contracts, right? Where when the each year, you know what the increase is going to be, typically 2.5 to 3%. You're not adding any value. So medical triple net is if you're buying one that already has tenants in it, right? It is a retention of value strategy, right? You're maintaining with inflation. You're not
Preservation.
preservation, not growth of wealth, right?
Yep.
If you're buying an empty strip mall, right, that's in a great location and you're giving it a facelift and you're bringing medical tenants into it and you've now tripled the value of that building, sure, count me in, right?
Yep.
That's growth of wealth. If you're buying like a nice apartment building in a nice area that's 95% stabilized, right? Like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Yeah, it's a great, awesome building. Awesome. You're paying for it,
Yeah.
right? So there's no increase in value again, right? You're just hoping to keep up with inflation. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of folks, investors, partners come to me and they're looking at mitigating risk. And
Hmm.
it's not just mitigation of risk because you're never going to get outsized returns with just focusing on mitigating risk, right? It's risk adjusted returns. You need both. You need those really high returns, and then you need really high returns on something where you can really dive in and minimize each of those risks. You have strategies really to lower the risk or your overall risk adjusted return, outsizes inflation. Um, yeah.
Yeah, the reason why things are quote risky is because there's more variables that you have to understand and control and influence and improve, and but therein lies there's a skill set, right, to influence those variables. And once you have it and once you've improved upon it, then you feel more and more comfortable taking on these quote riskier deals because you know how to influence the variables. And therein lies the return because you have the skill set to influence the outcome and therefore generate the return that you want. So yeah, I'm not a development expert as Josh is, right? But I understand like the variables I need to influence on our value add deals to produce the outcome we want. And once you do it once, you just do it again and again and again, and you refine. Just like running your dental practice, right? Like your first year in practice ownership is probably not your best year in practice ownership. It's just how it works. But over time, you just kind of get reinforced what works and therefore get better and better.
And it's very easy for me to say no now, right? Because I'm very clear on, these six things need to be in place to get those outsized returns, right? Here are the problems we know how to solve and solve them better than the market, right? And so, no, 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 yes, right?
And I know this of everyone. So Josh, like I would sometimes I'll send Josh like a deal and I'm like, I'm probably gonna pass on this, but I just wanted to get your opinion. What do you think? Like, and he's like, you already know. Because we already know you already like you're like there's potential here, but we can't control this variable. We can't influence this one variable that may affect everything else. And then we're just like, yeah, you gotta even though it looks good on paper, you have to know your limits and you gotta know what you want to say no to or yes to for that matter. But the smartest people and the best investors I know say no all the time. And
All
they're
the
like,
time.
that doesn't excite me. That's not something I can influence. So no.
I want to come to the poker table with severe advantages over everyone else at that poker table, right? Like
Yep.
they all have four aces in their deck. I have 12 aces in my deck, right?
There you
That's how I
go.
want to come to the poker game, right? I can still lose with 12 aces in my deck, right? But the chances are much lower. So I think that would be the take home is when you're doing real estate, make sure you got 12 aces in your deck.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yep. Yep. Well said.
All right. Well, today we covered how do you combat 7 to 9% inflation and loss of buying power. You create a kick A investment portfolio. We talked about what causes inflation, both printing of money and taxation. We talked about evidence, like anecdotal evidence of inflation locally for me, and how you can observe those own things in your area on what you're spending money on and really calculate your own inflation so you have a real understanding of that. And most importantly, we talked about what to do about it, right? If you're trying to preserve wealth, stocks, gold, that's fine. But if you're trying to go get ahead, you're trying to grow your wealth so you can, create freedom in your life, retire someday, then you really need to be in something that has that grows wealth. So that would be businesses that you understand and that have a strong sponsor in place and real estate, but real estate where you really value add, you force appreciation, and you have the tools. You have 12 aces in your deck, everyone else has four. That's the kind of real estate that you want to get into to get the highest risk adjusted returns.
Yep. Playing the game with people that have a competitive advantage, whether it's in
Yep.
business or real estate. Yep.
Yep. All
Or be
right.
the person. Well said.
That was a great show.
Thanks for joining us today. If you want to connect with us directly and keep the conversation going, join our private Facebook group. We'd love to have you in the discussion. If you want to see or listen to any of our other shows, you can find them on our YouTube channel by searching Dental Real Estate Partners. Or if you prefer to listen in podcast format, look for us on your favorite podcast app or streaming platform.
Content from Dental Real Estate Partners is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial, legal, or investment advice. All investments carry risk. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Always consult a qualified professional. Dental Real Estate Partners is not responsible for outcomes from actions taken based on this content.